Welcome to this C# complete tutorial. I hope that you will enjoy this tutorial and it will be straight to the point and covering all the things that you want to learn about C# practically and theoretically in a way that is simplified and straight to the point. In this tutorial, we're going to cover multiple subjects, mainly completely cover all the main and essential constructs of C# or C# elements and infrastructure. So we will begin with C# setup, then C# environment and first app example, C# language fundamentals and math operators, C# assignment and Boolean operators, C# user input, how to get an input from a user, C# conditionals, such as using if and switch, C# loops like while and for, C# arrays and looping through arrays, exceptions, try catch, C# file operations, opening a file, appending a file and writing to a file, C# methods such as functions and procedures, C# classes and objects, and finally C# Windows Forms app. As an example, we're gonna create a Windows Form application in C#. Hello everyone, in this tutorial we're going to learn how to set up C#. So at first you go to Google and download visualstudio.net. You type download Visual Studio, you go to the site of Microsoft, install free for Windows, Mac, download community, and now Visual Studio is downloading. And by the way, Visual Studio is the platform to program in C# because C# is a language developed essentially by Microsoft. So once it's downloaded, you can go to the folder or click directly on it. I will go to the location where it has been downloaded right now. This is Visual Studio setup, and you run the setup and we will wait for it to be downloaded and installed. All right, so now since it has been installed, we need to also install C#, Visual Basic F#, this entire package here. So you check the box. Okay, now I won't select F# or preemptive protection. Let's check .NET Framework 4.6, 4.71, development tools. We'll check also .NET Framework 4.81. We click install. Alright, now it has been installed. I don't want to sign in, so skip for now. I will choose the dog theme and start Visual Studio. To create a new project, click Create a new project. Then we will choose C# Windows Forms. Next, we will call it C# Tutorials. The solution and project in the same directory is fine. Next, .NET 8 Framework, which is required, by the way. Without the .NET Framework, the software won't run. Once it opens, I need to point to something that everything related to the graphical user interface is actually written in code within the designer class.cs. So if you look at this class, designers.cs, whatever you place here, and by the way, whatever we get from the tools, such as the buttons, the text button, any component would be written in class called designer.cs. I need to get the tools. Now to get components to the graphical user interface, you need to click on view, then toolbox or Ctrl-Alt-X is a shortcut. Once you have the toolbox, you can drag into the Windows Form button or text box or anything related to whatever you need within the program. So let's say I want to get a label within the Windows Forms. You drag and drop, then you can change the properties of this label. So to get to the properties of any component within C#, you click on the properties button symbolized by this key, this toggle, so to speak. And you can change the properties such as text within the button. Click on it, you click on the button and you go to the text to change the label of the button. Let's say click me. I can change the name of the variable because the button behaves as a variable. So the button name, which is the identifier of this button, is button1. So I will change it to click_btn or button. Okay, so that will become the name of the variable. I can also change the size of the button either by manipulating these handles here or by going to the properties, and the size would be somewhere under the properties such as width and height. All right, you see location. If I change the location by editing this value, let's say I type 400, it will go to the right. Now, to give you a feel of what a C# application looks like, let's at first create a simple application before going into the environment, explaining the environment of the C# platform, because once you get to know and understand the tools, you can understand how C# works. At first, I dragged button. I called this button click_button. If I double click on click me, and by the way, this is the label of this button that I've changed within the properties. So I clicked on the button, went into the properties, which is I activated here. And within these properties, you have text, the label of the button. I can change it to something else. Okay, it's not the name or identifier of the button, but it's only the label. I can change it to click me now. And if I resize it, it will appear clearly. I can change even the font of this button. If I go to properties, to the font, I can increase the font to 11. I can change it to bold. And when I click the button, all the properties related to that component, whether it is a text box or a label or a button like here, I will be shown all the properties related to that component and I can edit them accordingly. Okay, so you might wonder if I'm changing the properties here and if I'm creating the Windows form by dragging and dropping on the graphical user interface. But where is actually the code written? Because C# is a programming language. But where are these components announced or declared within the program? The answer is within the form1.designer.cs. The class designer.cs is the one that's actually writing the code, defining the properties for different components such as the size, the font size, the width, height, back color, front color, and the font type. So if I click on form1.designer.cs, I will get the buttons and labels and whatever component that has been declared written as code. So if I click on designer.cs, it will show me all the components that have been created within the program. If I go to click button, okay, it is pointing to the code where this button has been declared. As a first simple application, it is purposed to get you started immediately with C#. With a little talk, if you have some understanding of programming, you can get started immediately. But also for those who are beginners, they can see how C# works, how it is straightforward and very interesting. So if I double click on click me now, it will automatically create what is called a function. What this function or method does is when I compile and run the application, whenever the user clicks on click me button, the C# platform, whatever commands are written within this function will be executed sequentially. So to give you an example, I can write message box .show, which will pop up a message like an alert whenever the user clicks on the button. Right within this alert box, hello world. And let's run it. It will compile and run. So if I click, you'll see notification or alert message. Now concerning the graphical user interface, the environment of C# and other things. So let's get into that. I need to select form1.cs, the first form within the application. So whatever component I click on, it will give me all the properties related to the component, whether a button, a text box, a label. So if I click on label, it will give you all the related properties for that label, such as what is written in that label. Let's say evaluate numbers, and we will call the text of the button. You see, I clicked on the button. I'm recalling the text or renaming the text evaluate. Other than the properties of buttons and other components within C#, we have events. Now, one of the events you've already seen is the click. So if I double click within the programming environment within this Windows form, the button, it will automatically create The click function means when I run the program and click on the button once, not double click, it will run all the commands that are written within this function. However, we have other types of events. Let's say I want the program to do something whenever I hover over the button. So how to define these specific events related to the button or to other components? This applies to other components as well. So I click on evaluate. You go to this icon here. It has a label called events. You click on it. All right. And what I want to do is related to mouse actions. What mouse enter means is that whenever cursor enters this component, is in the domain of this component, the procedure or function named here will be called. Actually, I can immediately double click here and it will create this event for me. So let's say whenever the mouse hovers over this component, I want the label of this component to change. All right. So let's remember, what have we named the button? Okay, click button. So I want when the mouse enters this component that click underscore button dot text shall be named something else. Let's say entered component. Let's run it and you will notice something. You see, when I enter into the domain of this component by the cursor, it changed the text accordingly, just like is written inside the method. Other things related to the environment. So you see here the structure of the program. You have one form so far, and underneath this form you have class designer.cs and all the program related to this form. You see form 1, this is the actual program here where all the methods are being written. The first one, which is the constructor of the form, is called initialize component, which will initialize all the components within the program, such as the button, such as the text box, etc. All right. So if you want to run something before the components are initialized, you can write it here. You can call a function here, and we will learn how to define functions afterwards. So basically, this is the environment. I can also even click on the Windows form and change its own properties, such as if I go to the properties here, yeah, that's the properties. I can set sizable to false so that it won't be resizable. I can change even the text being the title of this Windows form from form 1 to, let's say, my first application. I can even change the logo. You see, this one can be changed by an icon, which has the extension .ico. I can change even the background, the font color, location, maximum size, etc. All of that can be also changed. All right, now we're gonna go back to the basics and learn the foundation or the building blocks of the C# programming language. And we're gonna do that inside an environment different than the Windows Phone's environment. I opened Visual Studio.net. You go to create a new project, then to console app, because we're not gonna use in this tutorial right now the graphical user interface, but rather we're gonna learn the foundation, or like the variable declaration, the functions, how C# works. All of these things we're gonna learn right now before going into developing in a Windows Phone's environment and interacting with a GUI. So you click on console app. Next, I'm gonna change the location. I'm gonna click on it, documents. We go to RS projects, right click new, and we're gonna type C# applications. Okay, we'll select C# applications. And this will be the directory or folder in which every project we're gonna create is going to be stored. For the project name, training application or training app. Next, and create. Okay, program.cs, by the way, is the main entry point for every application in C#. That's the main class here. So if I run it, it will print console.writeLine means print to the console this string which is listed on the inside of this function. So if I run it, hello world, printed to the console. Now, by the way, in order to comment a line, let's say I want to write a comment that should not be run by C#, you write 2 forward slashes, for each line, okay, this is a training app, or if you have multiple lines, you need to write / start, you end it with /, and whatever is written between these won't be run by the program. It will be only comments. So let's start with variables. Variables have specific data types in C#, such as integer, real numbers, which are designated by float or double. Double is a larger number with fractions than float. You have string, which is a chain of characters. You have Boolean. All right, so let's see. If I write int x and I can give it an initial value equals 3, int y equal 4. Okay, so console.writeLine x plus y. Let's see if this works. And you see you have the addition of 3 plus 4, which is 7. And by the way, this is how it works here, because console.writeLine only prints string data types. It prints chains of characters or strings. But how did it print x plus y? Because simply how it works is that it added both values and then casted them or converted them into a string data type. If I change the data type here, let's say float x equal 100.345, float y equal 60.33, and let's add x plus y. It will give us a float data type, okay? And we need to add f at the end of each number so as to designate them as floats, okay? They are not declared as float by default. If I want x plus y, and you will get a float sum. Double will give you the same thing. Here I need to designate them as d, I think. Okay. Console.writeLine x plus y. It will give you the same value. The only difference is that the double data type can carry a larger float number. Boolean, designated by bool, let's say bool answer equal false. Console.writeLine answer, and it will give you false. Same thing for string values. Okay, so if I type string name equal John, console.write name, it will give you the name of that person, which is a string, okay, a chain of characters. Mathematical operations. So what are the most common ones? Let's at first declare two variables. Let's say int x equal 30, int y equal 5, int z equal x plus y. First is the sum. So console.writeLine z, which will give me the sum, which is 35. Now, multiplication, 150, subtraction, the same thing, 25, which is 30 minus 5, division, 30 divided by 5, 6. Also, you have the increment, which is, let's say, x plus plus means x plus equal 1. It is the same thing, okay? Which, what it does is that it takes the original value of x, 30, then it increments 1 to 30 and stores the outcome into x. Gives you 31. Decrement, or x minus minus, also it can be written x minus equal 1, and it should decrement x by 1. So it will give you 29. You have also, lest we forget, the modulus. The modulus would give you back the remainder of the division. So let's say int z equal x mod y. So the modulus operator would give you the remainder of the division. The answer would be 0. Okay, because 30 divided by 5 is exactly 6. But if you divide 30 by, let's say, 7, you would have a remainder, which is equal to. You also have logical operators. Logical means whether a condition is true or false. So let's say console.writeLine x is greater than y. Okay, x greater than y. So this should return true. And you see, true. X less than y should return false. These are actually comparison operators. By the way, another operator is equal, which is written x equal y. Okay, it returns whether x is equal to y. You see, one equal sign means assignment operator. However, if we want to compare if x is equal to y, you need to place two x's one after the other, which should give you false. Now, if I want to check whether x is different than y in value, this is the symbol for that, exclamation point and equal sign. Okay, so this should return true because x is different than y. Okay, it returned true. Okay, let's try another thing. Let's say int s equal 5. Okay, so if I want to pair two comparison operations, okay, if I want two conditions to be true, let's say, so console.writeLine, x is different than y, and y is greater than s. So what this means is that both of these two conditions should be true so that the outcome would be true. Okay, so x needs to be different than y, but at the same time, y should be greater than s. This should return true since both of the conditions are met. True. Now, if I violate one of the conditions, so let's say x different than y and y is less than s, which is false. Y is greater than s. Since one of the conditions is false, it should return false. It's like multiplication, and consider true being 1 and false being 0. So the AND operation, which is denoted by double ampersands, means that this condition should be true, or 1, and also this one should be true, which is 1, because 1 times 1 would give you 1, so that both of them would be true. Now, since the second one is false, so the final outcome would be false. And we have false. Another operator for comparison is the OR operator. Now, the difference is the OR operator means that it is enough for one condition to be true so that both of them would give you true. Now, let's talk about casting. What casting means, it is the conversion between two data types from one to another. So let's say I'm declaring a double value here, double x equal 7.4345 f, and int y is equal to x. Okay, this will give you a fault, an error. Why? Given the fact that y cannot be equal to x since y is integer and x is double. Double means a real value. So in order to have one value assigned to another, since they are two different data types, we need to do what is called casting. What casting means is converting from one data type to another. So int y, you place before x in within two parentheses, which will parse, so to speak, the value of x from a double value to an integer value. So if I print y, you will notice something. You see, we've gotten rid of all the real fractions within the value. Another thing we can do is, let's say I have a string here. So string means a chain of characters. String s equal, let's say 130.34. So if we want to cast this string value into an integer value, int z equal int s. This is how we're gonna try to parse the string s into an integer value. Now, if we run it, you will see that it won't work. Why? Because it's not actually a number, it's a string value. So we need to go about it in a different way. At first, double dot parse s, and then before that, I need to place int. Okay. So let's see if it works. And console.writeLine z. Okay, we need to get rid of f here. Let's run it. And it works. So you have a value. By the way, the f should be only mentioned when you have a declaration of a double value or a float value. However, here within this string, we should not have f, otherwise it would be misinterpreted. So what we've done is casting the string s into double first, then we casted it back to integer. So it is a double casting. You can actually format it this way. From the inside, you're parsing s into a double value, then you're casting it into an integer value and assigning it to z. So let's go into the mathematical operations. So let's say I have the values x and y. Okay, let's declare three values. Int x equal 20, int y equal 30. All right, so if I want to get the maximum between the three values mentioned above, okay, so I will call another variable m, int m equal math, which is a library, by the way, or a class that contains different methods or functions that we can use in order to compare these different values. So math.max, and it can compare only two values. So we're going to compare x and y. Let's write m, the console, and between x and y you have 30 is the maximum. Now you have many functions under math library. So double tan equal math.tangent of y, double, let's say, okay, tan h or hyperbolic, okay, tan h, hyperbolic tangent, math.tan y, and let's right line si, then co, tan, and tan h. Co, tan, tan h. Let's run it, and you will have four different values. You see the sine at first, then the cosine, tan, and hyperbolic tangent. All belong to the math class. Of course, you have other things. Let's check, let's say, the exponential. So double x equal math dot exponential of y. And let's see the value. By the way, look at what I can do also, console.writeLine. And before x, I can concatenate this value to a string value. The exponential show of the value here, y, is exponential, and it will give you the outcome, okay, more than a billion perhaps. So these are mainly the math operations. Of course, you have many more. You have like the square root. So let's also try this one. The square root of x is plus math.sqrt x. And let's check the value. The square root of, I think it was 20, is 4.47. String operations. So let's declare two strings. String s1 equal hello, string s2 world. If we want to concatenate these two strings into one string, you simply do string s3 equal s1 plus s2. And if I print s3, let's see what happens. You have both hello and world based on the same sentence within the same variable. Let's say I want to turn a string into all caps lock, okay, all caps. So console.writeLine s1 dot upper to upper, it will turn it to all caps lock. Let's check it. All caps. To lower would give you the exact opposite. It will turn it all to lower caps to lower. Another way to embed variables within a string, okay, let's say console.writeLine, and we have values that are integer, that are not string. Int x equal 10, int y equal 20. You place a dollar value before the double quotation of the string. X is equal to two braces x, and y is equal to two braces y. What C# will do is accessing actually the values of x and y in memory and display them in the console.writeLine. So x here is different than x here because x here is just a letter. But here we are referring to the variable and basically to the value of this variable within the memory, which is 10. The same thing here between braces is actually accessing the value of y, which is 20. So it will give you x equal 10 and y is equal to 20. Also, strings can be considered as arrays of characters. So let's say I need to access a specific character within this array. Here it's an array. It has a size of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, around 7. To prove the point, if you output to the console s1.length, it will give you the length or the number of characters within this string array, which should be 7, if I'm not mistaken. Correct, it's 7. Being dealt with as an array, we can access each character within this string separately. If I type s1 0, it will give me the first character of s1, which is H, capital H. And you see we have capital H. S2 0, 1, 2, because by the way, the first index is always 0 within an array. 0, 1, 2, so it should give me L, lowercase l. Also, we have substring. So what is substring? Substring means give me the chain of characters starting from a specific index. So let's say s1 dot substring, we open two parentheses. Okay, so give me the substring starting from 3. What is 3? So if you count here 0, 1, 2, 3, it should start from n all the way to the end. Let's see if it works. Yes, and it gave you low, which is a part of the string starting from index 3. So if I type s1 dot, and we're accessing all the methods of the string class. So you have append. Append means add to the string another string. You have equals, okay, comparison of or between two strings. Replace, okay. So if I type replace, and this is what replace means. Replace for me a part of the string with another part. Let's say LL, I want to replace it with YY within the string. Okay, so replace LL in S1 with YY, and you will see the outcome. You will have another word where L has been replaced with Y. You have string.remove, you have too many methods to mention. So S1 dot to lower, okay, we've seen to lower, append, count, okay, ends with group by, too many actually. Dot remove, let's say remove, okay, I want to remove a part of the string which is LO. Another thing is index of. So let's say I want to get the index or the position of a part of that string. So let's say we have this word here. I want to check the index or the position of OW. We'll place OW. So this word, where does it start? At position 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you see it starts at the 4th position within the string. This is what we're looking at. One final thing is special characters. So let's say I want within a string to place a word within two double quotations. But the double quotations are reserved to the actual delimitation of a string. So how to use them as normal characters that don't mean anything. And you see here, this double quote, there's an error because it has considered this double quote as the end of this string here. So how to remove its significance as a double quote that denotes a string? How to use it as a normal character? You simply place before it a backslash and it will work fine. If I print right now S1, it should print it with these two characters intact. These two characters are working well. Let's say I want to place a tab within this string. So to do that, I type /T, which means a tab. Okay, so it will create a tab between this and none. Okay, so if I print it here, it will create a distance, you see, as if you press tab, okay, within a word text. You have a new line. So let's see how new line works. Type simply /n. Afterward, this is a new line. And you will see this fraction of the string will be placed underneath the first block, which is here. Okay, so if I run it, this is a new line will be placed on the next line. Now let's talk about assignment operators. Int x equal 10. If I want to add to x1, I simply type x plus equal 1 or x plus plus, and they work both the same way. So console.writeLine x and you will get 11. Another way to do the same thing is simply writing x plus plus, and you get 11. If I want to decrement x by 1, type either x minus equal 1 or x minus minus. So this is the same as writing x minus equal 1. And what this operator does, just the same way that x plus plus work. So x minus minus would decrement x by 1. It will take the value stored in x, decremented by 1, so it would subtract 1 from it and then store it back into x. That's why x would be updated with a new value, which would be 10 minus 1 in this case, or 9. Let's talk about Boolean operators. So if you have, let's say, bool a equal true, bool b equal false. If I type console.writeLine a and this is how we write and, a and b. Double ampersand means that a and b both should be true, so that the outcome would be true. Otherwise, it would return false. So in such case, it would return false. Now, on the other hand, if you write a or b, meaning one of them should be true so that the outcome would be true, in such case, the answer would give true. It's enough for one of the options, the Boolean options, to be true so that the outcome would be true. To explain it in a better way, true in a binary sense would be like saying a equal 1. Okay, the same concept. B is false, so B would be 0. The AND operation, as if you are using a multiplication. 1 times 0 or 0 times 1 or 0 times 0 always would give you 0 or false. So double ampersand would be like a multiplication operator. So 1 times 0, 0 times 1, and 0 times 0 would give you 0 or false. Given that 1 is like saying it's true, 0 is equivalent to false. Meanwhile, the OR operator is like an addition in a binary sense. So when we're using an addition, 1 plus 0 gives you 1, 0 plus 1 gives you 1, and 1 plus 1 as well would give you 1. So it's enough for 1 to be true so that the outcome would be true. This is how it works. Alright, how to get the input from the user. So let's say string s, okay, console.writeLine, enter a numerical value. Okay, let's call it string value at first, because it will be entered as a string, then we will parse it or convert it to double afterward. After that, to get from the user, I simply type console.readLine. When the user give me a value, then I will work with that value to cast it into double. Okay, so value equal console.readLine. Then I will parse it double the value. Once I get the value from the user by reading from the keyboard, I will convert it into a double value. So the value equal double.parse value console.writeLine the value. Actually, let's multiply it by 3.333 after getting it from the user, and then we will display it. So enter a numerical value 3, and you see he parsed it into a float value, then multiplied it by 3.3333, which gave us 9.9999. This is how you get a value inputted from the user. Of course, this is more common in console applications rather than in a C# Windows forms. All right, let's talk about the conditionals, and we'll start with the if statement. What the if statement does, if a condition within if is true, let's say if x is greater than y, and we have two numbers here, x and y, x being 10, y being 7. So if x is greater than y, if this condition is true, which is a Boolean condition, then whatever within the body of if, delimited by these two open and closed braces, shall be executed. All the code within this domain, within this scope, so to speak, will be executed. So let's say console.writeLine x is greater than y. And you see the message would be displayed, x is greater than y, given the fact that this condition is true. Now another enlarged version, let's say if this condition is not true, then I need to go to check another condition. So how do we work it out? So if x is greater than y, then console.writeLine x is greater than y. Else, if another condition is true, which is if y is greater than x. In such case, we won't execute the first block, we will execute the second block. Then console.writeLine y is greater than x. Otherwise, if these two conditions are not met, we can write else, meaning that otherwise, if none of the conditions above is true, then execute the code in the final else, which is the default condition to be executed, which is the default statement that will be run. Console.writeLine if x is not greater than y, neither y is greater than x. In such case, x is equal to y. As simple as it is. X is equal to y. So let's change the values of x and y. Let's say x is equal to 3 and y is equal to 7. X is no longer greater than y, then y greater than x will be true, and this line would be outputted. So y is greater than x, correct? But if I place x and y both equal to 3, you will see that none of the both conditions that are at the beginning would be executed, but the last one, which is on the third line, x is equal to y. All right, another statement is the switch statement. Now the switch would test multiple options, and whatever option is correct, x is equal to 3, run this code. If it's equal to 4, run this code. To give you an example, okay, so switch x, let's say, and this is how you open it, and this is how you run. Case, if case is equal to 0, then console.writeLine x is equal to 0. After that, I need to break. We write a break here so that the switch case won't test any other options if one of them is found true. It won't go through the other options below. Case 1, console.writeLine x is equal to 1. Break. Case 2, console.writeLine s is equal to 2. Break. So let's run it. Now it will compare. Actually, x is equal to 3 here, so we're gonna place it as 2 or 1. You see, x is equal to 1, and what break does is that it avoids iterating in other options and checking other options. Since the first one is true, there is no longer any need to check the other options whether they are true or not, because only one of them will be true, the others will be false. So no need for the switch statement to go and check the other options. Another thing, by the way, yeah, let's change x to 10, okay? And I want to add to the switch statement here a case in which none of the above options are true, okay, which would be the default. So it's like the final else in the if statement. If none of the above is true, then what would be the default action that should be taken? Console.writeLine x is none of the above. Break. And if we run it, you will see that since x is equal to 10, so it's neither 0 nor 1 nor 2, then in such case, x is none of the above, which would be the default operation that will be run by the switch state. X is none of the above. Another example, by the way, for the first option, when we placed x equal 1, this was the code run, the second line, all right, because it wasn't 0 or 2. In fact, we didn't get to 2 because for case 1, it was the one that was true. Let's say I have a string value, string s or string answer equal yes. So we're gonna change the switch statement to switch on answer. So if answer equal yes, then you said yes. If answer is equal no, you said no. Otherwise, it would be a default case yes. And you see the intuitive C# would help me. Console.writeLine, your answer is yes. Break. Case the answer is no, then console.writeLine, your answer is no. Break. And finally, we need a default in case the answer was none of the above. Console.writeLine, you didn't answer properly. Break. Let's run it. And your answer is yes, given the fact that we've already filled the answer by yes. Now, of course, the proper operation would be taking the input from the user, not fetching it by default in the program, or the answer being taken from an external source other than the program. Now, another way to compare values, a short-handed if statement. A short-handed if statement or a trinary operator is a one-line if statement, and this is how it works. We have, let's say, z, an integer. If x is greater than y, then I want to multiply x by 10. If x is less than y, I want to multiply it by 5. So if x greater than y, then x multiplied by 10. Otherwise, by 5. And I want to place the value or the answer inside z. So z equal, this is how we can do it. Z equal, and this is the ternary operator. If x is greater than y, okay, z is equal x times 10. Otherwise, this is the otherwise, okay? The column here. X, z would be equal to x times 5. And let's console.writeLine z. All right, so this is how it works. You have the condition here, condition. This is the outcome, z equal, based on the condition. If the condition is true, then as denoted by this interrogation mark, you have the first value. Otherwise, if this condition is not true, then z would be equal to the other value, which is, let's say, y, okay? Let's say here xx and yy, okay? These are the options. So let's run it, and z here would be equal to x times 10 since x is greater than y, all right? Which is 100. And you have 100 here. So again, if the condition is true, then this first block would be executed and the outcome would be filled inside of z variable. Otherwise, the other block after the column would be executed and stored in z. Now let's explain loops. You have the while loop, the for loop. We'll start with the for loop. Let's say you want to count from 0 to 9. You simply type for, and this is how the for loop works. You have the initialization or initial value. You have the condition, which is, let's say, y is less than 10, and you have the increment I plus plus, not y, it is I. For int I equals 0, this is the initialization. I is equal to 0, the first value. As long as I is less than 10, go into the loop. The loop is actually a scope or a block of code that will keep running as long as the condition is true. Unlike the if statement runs only once. However, the for loop or any type of loop will keep running as long as the condition, which is in the middle, is true. At each iteration, you have I++. I++ means increase I by 1. However, this is called a post increment, meaning that at first you have int I equals 0 and I won't be incremented until the block runs for the first time. Then I becomes 1. So if I type console.writeLine I, you will see that the first I is 0, although we've incremented it. However, post increment means that when it runs, then it will be incremented by 1. So at first it will be 0, I, then 1, and will be incremented by 2 when we get to the end of the loop, and we go back to the beginning, then 3 all the way to 9, because as long as I is less than 10, it will run. And you see 0, 1, all the way to 9. Now, in order to count to 10, I need to change the condition a little bit. So, for I equals 0 and I equals 0, I less than or equal to 10. So that when I is equal to 10, it will still run it. It won't break off the for loop. And you will see we will count from 0 to 10. An interesting thing we can do here, let's say I'm looping, but I want, once I find another condition is true, I want to break from the loop. I want to stop the for loop. So console.writeLine I. Alright, so if I is equal, let's say, to 5, then I want to stop looping. You see what I can do? If there is only one line in the if statement, you don't have or you don't need to use the braces if we have only one-liners of command. So if I is equal 5, break, else I can do this, else continue. Continue means keep looping, okay? Keep looping, but without running the rest of code. Console.writeLine, we will write here position is at I to show you what happens. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At 5, it broke out of the loop. Now, you would wonder what happened to console.writeLine. Why is it not running? Because I've written something here. Console.writeLine position is at plus I. We never seen it during the execution of the for loop. Why is that? You see, because what I've written here, if I is equal to 5, break from the loop. Otherwise, continue. Continue means that whatever comes after this continue, okay, don't run it. So in both cases, when I has become 5, we broke off the for loop, so we no longer printed the value of I. Why? Because when I had become 5, we stopped looping. In the else statement, else continue. So other than I equal 5, whether I is equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, continue means that whatever comes after this line, don't run it, okay? So continue will make the execution line or cursor, let's say it's executing here at this point, it won't keep going downward, but it will jump back to the beginning of the for loop. This is why, in both cases, if I equal 5, it broke off before executing this line. Otherwise, it continued, meaning printing 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, but continue means jump right back to the beginning to the for loop without going through console.writeLine statement. Okay, another way is, let's say I want to print the numbers from 1 to 10. We can do it without changing I less than 10 here. We simply write here console.writeLine I plus 1, because I alone would start from 0. I want it to start from 1. So you will see from 1 all the way to 10, because every number that would be printed was added 1, and this is how we count from 1 to 10. Actually, not from 0 to 10, from 1 to 10. Now, as for the while loop, how the while loop works, it is a little bit similar to the for loop, a loop that executes as long as a condition is true. So let's say int x equal to 30. And you write, while x is greater than 0, then console.writeLine x, meaning print the value of x to the console, but at the same time decrement x by 1. So x minus minus, it will be decremented by 1. Let's check it. And you see we have a decrementation from 30 all the way to 1. Now here, once x has become 0, it will check false here and it won't go any longer within the while loop. This is how it basically works. Of course, we can marry a while loop to a for loop to an if statement, being one inside of the other. We can use them all together, each one inside of the other one, based on your needs in the program. Let's talk about arrays. Now, the best application for a while loop and a for loop is for an array. And an array is basically a table indexed always starting from 0 all the way to n. So an array would look something like this. First row is actually the index, and in the second row we have the values of the array. 1, all right, so let's work with the values at the beginning, no need for the others. Value of this array or table at index 0 is 30, at index 1 is 20, at index 2 is 5. And you have in total 3 values, 3 elements within this table. So 0, 1, 2 act like addresses for the values stored within this array. Now, this array can be string, can be double, can be int, based on what type of data type, based on what type of values it is carrying within. Another thing to point to is, okay, how to loop through this array, how to go about all the values within this array. So you simply type for I equals 0 all the way to 2 without getting to 2. So for I, int I equals 0, I less than 3, because you have 3 values in total, I plus plus, console.writeLine, the value of I. So the value at 0 would be 30, at 1, 20, etc. Let's at first declare an array. To declare an array of data type int, integer. So int AR equal, you can say new integer x. This is an empty array. If I want to fill it immediately, you simply type int AR equal 20 within 2 braces, by the way, 40, 30. And automatically it will be a 3 values array of dimension 3. So if I print console.writeLine.ar.length, or the length of the array, would be 3, because it has only 3 values. And you have here 3. So let's loop through it and print all the values within this array. So I simply do the following. For int I equals 0, because the index always starts at 0 within an array. I less than ar.length, I plus plus, I less than ar.length, which is 3. I less than 3 would give you 2 in the maximum, which makes sense because the indexes of this array start from 0, then 1, then 2. So for int I equals 0, I less than ar.length, I plus plus, console.writeLine ar of I. Print the value of ar at index I. And he will print 20, 40, 30 without any errors. Another type of arrays would be, for instance, double array, string array, and of course, arrays should always have the same data type. We cannot say within the same array, in C# at least, integers, string. Let's say here, I decided suddenly to change this value to a string value. Let's say my car. It won't work. Why? Because it is an integer array, meaning all values should follow along the same data type. So let's declare a string array and loop through it. So string cars equal BMW. Okay, we need BMW, Rolls-Royce, and we're gonna loop through these values until we find a specific match. Let's at first print all of these values to the screen. So for int I equals 0, I less than cars dot length I plus plus console dot writeLine cars I. Let's say here I'm interested to do something more. I want to find whether Rolls-Royce or Mercedes, let's say, exists within this list or not. Okay, so I'm gonna declare another variable, which is a Boolean variable that would be either true or false. So bool exists equal false, and I'm looking for Mercedes. So for int I equals 0, I less than cars dot length I plus plus, if cars of I dot to lower, because let's flip it to a lower case, is equal to Mercedes. Otherwise, without to lower, Mercedes here with lowercase won't be equal to Mercedes capitalized. You see, the first initial is capitalized here. That's why I converted it to lower. If cars I dot to lower equal Mercedes, then exist equal true and break. Why we need to break? And you see, I can run it on the first line. Okay, it would be more suitable to write it in a more neat way. Okay, so let's make it more neat. If cars of I, or if cars at position I dot to lower equal Mercedes, exists equal true, and break because no need to loop anymore. We found our car. As long as it is not found, it will keep looping. If it was never found, it would go back to the default value, which is false. False only changes by true if the car has been found, which is Mercedes. So finally, console.writeLine car found result is exists, meaning the found result would be either true or false. In our case would be true. Let's check it. Car found result is true. Why? Given the fact that we have a match to Mercedes within the array. That's why. Now you have other operations related to arrays such as sorting. We will declare another array here. So you have int numbers equal to, okay, let's remove whatever is below. Int numbers equal 199 for. Now you have an operation such as sort. So int sorted numbers, we'll call it, equal numbers dot order by descending, meaning from the highest value to the lowest value. Dot to array because dot order descending needs to be casted to an array so that we can store it in stored numbers. And let's go into for int I equals 0, I less than sorted numbers dot length I plus plus, and we will print this new array so as to check if the sorting has been successful. And it's perfect. We have sorted values from the largest to the smallest. Okay, let's work with the cars now, with the string. So string new cars equal cars dot order by descending, okay, dot to array, and we will look also for int I equals 0, I less than new cars dot length I plus plus console dot writeLine new cars I, and you have RMGBW. You see it is sorted in reverse, meaning from R, which would be the last among the others, then M, then G, all the way to B, which would be, of course, B is after A. Now, if I want to apply the action to the array itself without creating a new array, we can type array.sort numbers. Okay, I'm sorting numbers for int I equals 0, I less than, not new cards, I less than numbers dot length I plus plus console dot writeLine numbers I, and let's see if it has been sorted. it has been sorted in an ascending order also, from the smallest to the highest. Same thing you can do with cars, which is a string. So array.sort cars, and let's print it. Okay, or int I equals 0, I less than cars dot length I plus plus, console.writeLine cars I, and you have also BMW Golf. You see, it is an ascending order. Let's learn about another concept here, which is the try, catch, or exceptions in general. So what is an exception? Let's say there is an operation that the compiler is running, and that compiler might encounter a fatal error. The most common example for that is when dividing by numbers, is dividing by 0. When you divide by 0, mathematically it would lead to infinity. However, in C# and any computer system, this would create a big error that will lead to the program crashing. So in order to avoid these events from occurring while allowing the program to keep going on, bypassing that error, bypassing that fault, we need to use the try catch clause. So how does it work? Let's say you have int x equals 30. So let's say try, and this is how the block is written. Try catch. In catch I write exception E. Within the try, this is where we're trying an operation. If it works, then we simply jump out and continue. If it doesn't work, it goes into catching the exception to present the error to the user. So try, let's say, int z here, and z equal x divided by 0. Console.writeLine z. Catch exception, okay, console.writeLine e.toString. E, which is the error that has been generated, I'm parsing it or casting it into a string and displaying it to the user. And here I'm gonna write the rest of the program to show you how C# will bypass the error. But this is how try catch works. Inside the try clause, you write the operation that is risky, that can crash. Then in catch, in case an error has been generated, it will be caught by the catch clause, and it will be displayed in our case to the console. So let's run it. System.divide by 0 exception attempted to divide by 0, that's the error. And after the error has been generated, the rest of the program continues, and the proof is that this line has been outputted and it's presented after the try catch clause. So although we've run into a problem, this problem has been outputted to the console, but the program kept running by executing the next line, which is outside of the try catch clause, namely this one, line 15. Let's say I want to work with files, meaning I want to read from a file, an external file actually, from C#, or write to a file, alter, append. How can we actually do that? At first, you need to call the file based on its location. To make it more simple, without using the full path of a file, I can place a file, like a text file, within the actual location of the program where I'm working right now. So if we go to Documents, C# Apps, where C# applications are written, my sharp console, this is the name of my application, and I'm gonna create a text here, new txt document. We'll call it file1.txt, and we're gonna write inside of it whatever. So let's write an arbitrary text, okay, a random text. We'll save it and we'll try to read that text from C#. So the file name is file1.txt. You simply type I'm gonna read that file into a string. So string txt equal file dot read all text, and the path is simply file1.txt, since it is a local file within the same folder where you have the C# program. So let's write it to the console.writeline txt. So we found a problem, could not found C user document. So we will change its location. Bin debug net8. Yeah, it needs to be in the same location where you have the program, the running program. Okay, it's already a text file, so no need to write its name as file1.txt. Okay, you simply write file1, and its extension by default is .txt. It's a text file. Right now it should work fine. We've displayed the content of that file to the console. Let's say I want to write to this file. So string new text, or ns meaning new string, equal hello world, and new content is being written to the file. To write this new string to this file, we simply type file.write all text. So the path is file1.txt, and the string to write is ns. We will read the file how it has become in order to show it on the screen. Console.writeline text, okay, to see the updated version of this file. So file.write all text, we've written to that file the new string, which is hello world, a new content is being written. Then I'm reading it back to txt, which is a string, to show what changed within this file. You see, a new line has been appended to this file. This is what has changed within it. Of course, we have other functions such as file.delete. I can delete the file using this. So file.delete file1.txt would get rid of this file. So file.delete file1.txt. This will remove file1.txt from the directory. Let's check other functions. So file dot, you have append text, create text, decrypt equals exists, to check whether this file exists within the path. Okay, so file exists, file1.txt should return a boolean. So bool ex meaning exists equal file.exists file1.txt console.writeline ex, and you will see true, since this file exists. Now again, the purpose behind file exists is to check whether the file exists or not, so that if you want to delete it, you won't generate an error if it's already deleted. Or if you want to write to that file and I don't want to end up overwriting it, okay, I need to check whether this file exists. If not, I need to create a new one.
Alright, let's talk about methods. Now we have two types of methods. You have the voids or procedures, and you have the functions. For the procedures or voids, simply what they do is executing something and then they deallocate from the memory. They don't return any value. They just execute whatever the functionality on the inside, of course sequentially. However, for the functions, function would return a value. That's why the function is declared by starting with a data type such as int. Let's say a function that returns the sum of numbers. So you would have int sum or double sum, because it needs to have a data type since it is returning a value having that data type. So let's start with voids. Void display or display message. And here it is where we can declare a variable, an input. String message and inside the body console.writeLine message. This is how we can call the procedure, by simply calling its name, and in our case we need to fill the message with a value. Alright, so hello world. Alright, because on the inside you have console.writeLine message. Of course, our example is very simple, but a procedure can have a more complex functionality on the inside. It can be running a sequence of code that's more sophisticated, but the point is it doesn't return a value. Void means it is empty. It only executes a code. For the function, the difference is that the function would return a value. To give you an example, so int, let's say sum. Alright, I hope it's not reserved. And by the way, if you see here the shadows, I can have inside sum an array of values, an array of inputs for which you can evaluate the sum. But let's make it more simple. So int x, int y, int z, and on the inside, let's say int answer a equal x plus y plus z, and return a. It has to return a value, because this is how it works. Let's say I declare int, this is on the outside of the function, let's say int val is equal sum 358. If I write the value sum 358 will evaluate the sum. It will be 16, of course. It will be assigned to this value here and then displayed on the outside. But the function, the point is, this function is returning a value. That's why we have to store the value inside another variable. 16. Okay, let's declare another function. Let's say function having a double data type, double prod, double x, double y, and it returns the product of two numbers, x times y. Okay, so double val equal prod 4.3 or 33 and 2.55. Console.writeLine val and you see it returned the product of these two numbers. One final thing I need to point at is the fact that these variables here, these parameters within the function, are different than the variables declared outside of the function. This is called scoping. This is the scope of the variables here, double x, double y. It is only inside the function. In other words, I can declare double x equal 3.56, let's say, double y, and there's no problem. You see, it's like x and y here are different than x and y here, simply because whatever is declared inside a function, it will deallocate, it will be ripped off the memory once the function executes, and it won't remain. Its domain is only inside the function. It has no relevance on the outside. That's why double x here won't conflict with double x here within the program, although they are two variables having the same name, which is forbidden inside of C#. But given the fact that these two variables, x and y, within prod happen to be declared inside the function, okay, they are independent of those declared on the outside. So I can simply type double val2, let's say, equal x times y, line val2, and you will see that this would be a different answer, which is
3.56 times 2.4899. And there is no conflict between the two. They are completely different from each other. Alright, let's talk about C# classes. At first, C# is an object-oriented programming language, or OOP. It is structured around objects and mainly classes. A class is a prototype or a blueprint of a specific category, a specific object that have unique properties and unique behaviors. Properties would be variables. So for instance, let's say a car. Car has wheels, it has number of wheels, this is a variable. It has like a type, a manufacturer name, etc., a color also. And behaviors are functions and procedures, namely methods. So functions like car starting up, car stopping, braking, etc. So let's see here in this example, we have in a game, let's say, an environment, and within that environment we have objects such as an airplane. The airplane would be for the player and also for the enemy airplanes, okay, that are combating the player. The combat aircraft would be the class or the prototype or the blueprint, and for both the player and the enemy would derive from a blueprint, which is the airplane, which is the aircraft. So both of them would have the same properties, the same common characteristics, and even behaviors. Both of them, or for any type of airplane, you have the airplanes that fly, that take off, that fire rockets if it is a combat airplane, etc. So, but these variables would change value from a type of an airplane to another. This is what we would call instance. An instance is a subset of the class. So for example, if you have a class called cars, a car would have different instances that would be different types of cars, such as BMW, Corvette, etc. or Chevy. Properties and behaviors, as we said, they would change from one type of airplane to another. Even the functionalities would change a little bit. So if all airplanes have an engine or multiple engines with a type power, all airplanes would have a fuel tank, but the capacity for that tank would differ from one airplane to another. The number of bullets would differ from one airplane to another, even the number of rockets and the number of lives in a game. Life would be how much damage the airplane could take before being broken off or being destroyed. So at the same time, these airplanes that have different characteristics or different values have common behaviors, have common types of properties, although the properties would differ in value from one to another. Different types of the same class, namely airplane, in this case would be called instances of that class that use the same methods, that have the same properties but different calibers or different values. So you would have an airplane, let's say F-16, it would have one engine versus the F-35 that would have two engines. For the properties, as you see here, you have number of missiles, for instance, number of bullets, number of lives, fuel capacity. These are the properties or the variables. For the behaviors, you would have the functions such as fly, barrow meaning the plane when it turns around its own axis during flight, fire when it fires whether rockets or bullets, and calculate damage to return how much damage it had taken so far and how much it can still survive the fight. So how do we declare a class? Let's say I want to declare class called airplane. You have the properties: private int number of missiles, private int number of bullets, private int number of lives, etc. Okay, and this is how we open up the scope of the class, and we close it by two braces, curly braces. Okay, an extension to that class. So here you have what is called a constructor. As you see here, the variables are all private. Private means that these variables are not accessible from outside of the class. Meaning, if I am inside a different class and I want to call airplane, if I type airplane dot, I cannot access these values or change in them because they are private. If they were public, I can access them directly. Here in this case, since they are private, I've created a constructor that is public. Public means this constructor can be accessed from outside of the class. Now the constructor is an initialization to the class, meaning I'm initializing the values for that class, for the variables of that class. You see here public airplane and number of missiles and number of bullets and number of lives, etc. Float, fuel capacity, meaning that let's say I created an instance which is airplane F-16, let's say, equal new airplane, okay? And I can fill here the values for the missiles, the bullets, the lives, etc. Now, these variables here are different from the variables here. As you see, this dot number of missiles, this variable belongs to the class itself, okay? Which is this one declared within the scope of the class. So this dot number of missiles, equal number of missiles, this second one to the right is actually the value fetched from outside of the class when you call this constructor. This is fetched from outside. I'll give you an example afterwards. This dot number of bullets, meaning the local variable, the local property of the class airplane, number of bullets, equal number of bullets, which is inserted from the outside, and etc. Here we declare after the constructor and the variables the methods. So among the methods, public void baro, let's say baro means when the aircraft starts doing maneuvers in air. And of course here, to make it simple, I simply just wrote to the console the aircraft is barrowing, okay, nothing else. Public int calculate damage level. So here, this is a function, not a procedure, because it's returning a value of data type integer. Okay, return this dot number of lives. So it's returning here, since the function is public, it can return to the outside this dot number of lives, which is a private integer. Okay, so in other words, I can access these private properties using public functions and methods. All right. Also, other functions are, let's say, okay, void fire, which is not a function, actually, it's a procedure. And what it is doing here, it is decrementing the number of bullets. You see, so each time you call the fire function or the fire procedure, it's not returning a value. However, it is decrementing the number of bullets which is inside the class, which is a private property, by the way. So you have a class or multiple classes, but we need the main class, which is in C# program. The class program is the main entry of the program via the static void main function. This is like int main within C++ or C, if you're familiar. So this is the main function, which is the entry point to the program entirely. This is where all other classes are called, and this is all where the interaction is done. Static void main string args, meaning here it is accepting string arguments. We need to just memorize it the way it is. Here we're declaring the instance of the class airplane. Now you see, this is how we declared airplane F-16. This is called a new instance, equal new airplane 7, which is the number of missiles. So this is the external value that will be assigned to what? To the internal value, to the actual property of the class. Then 600, of course, respectively here. 600 is the number of bullets within the class. So here, when it takes 600, it will assign it inside the class to the number of bullets declared inside the class, which is the actual property of the class itself. Number of lives 3, float, fuel capacity 200. And here we are calling the fire procedure, F16.fire. So let's practice with classes. At first, I'm gonna create a new project. I will create a Windows Forms app. Okay, we will call it my first app, my first application. I'm gonna change the directory to C# applications under documents. You can choose your own, of course, and create. Okay, if we look at the structure of the program, you have form1.cs, which is a class of the form, the Windows Forms. You have form1.designer.cs, as we mentioned before. Within form1.designer.cs, you have all the components declared within the program and their characteristics, their properties, and the values for their properties. And you have the main class, which is program.cs. In program.cs, you have the static void main, which is the entry point of the program. So if you look at static void main, you have application configuration.initialize, initializing all the configuration for the app. Of course, here, these are only comments. And you have application.run that launches the new form, a new instance of the form, okay, which is form1.cs that you see here. And we can, in this program, create a new class. All right, so let's at first comment the new form so that it won't launch when the program is run. And I will test the console.writeLine. Console.writeLine, hello world. So let's check if it will print a message. Alright, so console.writeLine was not working because this is a Windows Forms. So I've tried system.diagnostics.debug.writeLine and it shows the message. So let's create a new class. Let's at first close all of the other things. Okay. Project, add class. We're gonna name the class. Okay, let's resize. Airplane.cs. Add. We're gonna declare properties for this new class. So at first, private string type or type of the airplane, private int number of bullets, private int number of missiles, private float tank capacity or fuel capacity. And by the way, what private means is that when we create a new instance for this class, all these properties that are private are inaccessible to an external class. So to give you an example, if I go to program.cs class, which is by the way the main entry point for the class again, and let's comment this one. Airplane A equal new airplane. And by the way, what you see here is the empty constructor, which comes by default with any class created in C#, since we have not created a constructor yet. If I type a dot, you see we don't have access to any of the variables within the class, to any of the properties within the airplane class. So if you go to airplane.cs and let's change number of bullets to public. This way, number of bullets, which became public, has become accessible to an external class, namely program.cs. So if I type again a dot, and you see a number of bullets has become accessible, so we can change its value. let's write using system.diagnostics.debug. .diagnostics, okay. If I write debug dot writeLine a dot number of bullets and we run it, we will see 1, which is the number of bullets in this example. Okay, so let's expand the class right now. We're gonna flip back number of bullets into a private property, and we're gonna build the constructor. So public, it will be public of course, airplane, and if I click tab, you see it has been created for us. String type, int number of bullets, int number of missiles, float fuel capacity, this dot type, and here this dot types is referring to the actual property of the class itself. Airplane type equal type. Type in the blue is the one that is taken from the outside, from the accessor, as well as this dot number of bullets, which is the private property of the class, is equal to number of bullets within the accessor. This dot number of missiles equal number of missiles taken from here, etc. Let's rewrite this line. This dot fuel capacity, which is the actual class property, equal fuel capacity taken from the accessor. And I will write another function or method, public int, let's say get number of bullets. And this of course will return an integer, and I simply type here return this dot number of bullets, which is by the way a private property. So if we go back to program.cs, okay, here this has become false because number of bullets is no longer public, it is private. We've changed it, and for the class here this has become false since number of bullets we changed it back to private property. That's why it no longer works. Moreover, airplane a equal new airplane, you see the constructor is no longer empty. We created a constructor that has different values that need to be inserted into it. Actually, we can fix this problem by creating an empty constructor manually, and this is how we can do it. If I go back to airplane.cs, public airplane, and you see we have an empty constructor. So if you go back, it's no longer false. Okay, this I think is called method overloading, meaning that you have an empty constructor and a fill constructor. Both of them actually can coexist with the same name, given that they have different variables in the accessor. Okay, they are called in different ways. They can be called in different ways, do different things, given that they have different variables in the caller. All right, so let's create airplane a equal new airplane, and here I want to fill these properties that we've seen in the constructor before. Let's actually copy them. You have string type, so type, let's say F16, which is a string, int number of bullets, let's say 500, number of missiles 300, finally fuel capacity such as 400.45. It's a float, so it needs to be denoted by F. Okay, and if I call a dot get number of bullets, I can store it inside a local variable, and b, I will call it equal a dot get number of bullets, and it can be accessed since both, by the way, the constructor itself and this method is public. Public means that these are accessible and can be used from outside of the airplane class, because here we are inside a different class, namely program.cs. And let's type debug.writeLine MB, and you have 500. We've gotten the value, and we are calling this method from outside of the class, from program.cs. By the way, also having inside of airplane.cs properties or variables that are private and inaccessible from outside of the class in a direct way is called encapsulation. We are encapsulating these variables or properties within the class. Let's talk about method overloading. Now, within airplane.cs you have a function or a method which is get number of bullets. Can we create another function having the same name but yet a different functionality? This is called method overloading, by which we mean creating another function having the same name as get number of bullets but different variables within the accessor which can alter its functionality. So if I write public int get number of bullets, but here I have int added bullets, as you see it has the same name as get number of bullets above. However, the difference here, I'm returning the actual number of bullets plus the added bullets. This dot number of bullets plus added bullets. We'll go back to program.cs. We'll declare another variable mb2 equal a dot get number of bullets. However, this time I'm gonna add to the bullets, let's say 1500. So if I write the mb2 to the console, and we will have two different values. You see, 500 the initial value and 2000 the other value which has been added, 1500. The point here is we can declare multiple functions having the same name. However, the discriminative thing between these different functions or methods would be the number of variables in the accessor. I can even create a third get number of bullets, but it should have different properties or different variables within the accessor to discriminate it from the other two. Of course, it should be created within the class airplane.cs. Now let's talk about inheritance. What is inheritance? So airplane is a blueprint for all the airplanes that you would think about. A class that is generic, that has common functionalities that all types of airplanes possess. However, let's say I want to create more specific functionalities for a more particular type of airplane, such as the F-16, for instance. I would create this as a new class, but it should inherit most of the first class, which is the airplane. It should inherit most of its functionalities and methods. Inheritance means whatever airplane.cs has, whether properties or the methods or the procedures, whether procedures or functions, if class F-16 is inheriting from airplane.cs, it would have all of its private properties and functionalities. However, we can do some changes. We can make some specific changes for the F-16 class, such as adding new methods not existing within airplane.cs. Moreover, you can override the functions that are within airplane.cs. So, to create this new class, I go to project, add class, and we will call it F16.cs. To make this class inherit from the airplane class, you simply type colon and then airplane.cs, meaning that F16 is inheriting from the airplane. So I'm creating the constructor for the F16, string type, int number of bullets, int number of missiles, float fuel capacity, we need to create the same variables here. Okay, string type, private, of course, private int number of bullets, private int number of missiles, private float fuel capacity. This dot type equal type, this dot number of bullets equal number of bullets, dot number of missiles equal number of missiles, and this dot fuel capacity equal fuel capacity. Alright, but how to make the subclass, which is F16, inherit not only the methods of the superclass airplane but also the constructor? In order to inherit the superclass's constructor, you simply go to F16 class, which is inheriting from airplane here, the subclass that is inheriting from the superclass, right? You go down to the constructor declaration, then here right before the two curly braces, or the first curly brace that opens up, you write colon, then the word base, you open up the parentheses, and then you write all the variables that are in the superclass, such as type, number of bullets, number of missiles, and finally fuel capacity. Let's try to make it line up on a different line. Okay, so this is the main important keyword here, base. Okay, after the declaration of the constructor for F16, colon, then base, and then you name all the variables within the superclass that need to match up with our own local variables. So if I go to program.cs and debug.writeline MB3, okay, which is 1800, it should be added to 600, right? Which is the number of bullets. And you see 2400. So we've successfully inherited not only the methods but also the constructor of the superclass. Now there's another concept called method overriding. What is method overriding? So let's say I'm in F16 class, and you know that get number of bullets is originally a function inherited from airplane.cs. Let's say I want to change it a little bit, okay? Or I want to override it. So in F16, given proposition that most of the functions declared in airplane.cs class, I want to use them the way they are, the way they already are. But get number of bullets, let's say I want to change it in the F16 class. So I simply declare that same variable within F16.cs and change its body. This is what is called method overriding. So int get, and it's public by the way, public int get number of bullets, and instead of returning the number of bullets the way it is, I'm gonna multiply that by 5 or by 100. So return number of bullets times 100. So I did not change the second one that has an integer in the accessor, but the one having an empty accessor. And this is with the function that has an empty accessor, not with the other one that has a declaration of int variable inside the accessor. So let's see what happens. You see this function again has been inherited originally from airplane.cs, but here I'm altering this function. So what do we mean by overriding? Let's save, and then let's go to program.cs. So nb3 equal f1.getNumber of bullets. Get number of bullets by default from airplane class should return 600. However, here we're gonna see something else. It will return a much larger number, which is 600 times 100, or 60,000. Why is that? This is what is called method overriding. We've overridden, okay, or disabled the original function that is in the superclass and overridden the functionality by the one declared locally. So, in other words, get number of bullets that has been declared, although with the same name, with the same declaration in the subclass F16, overrides and supersedes the one declared in airplane.cs, although they have the same name. So how C# works? So if there was no function declared in the local class, it will go up to the superclass and run it from there, okay, which was the original declaration for get number of bullets that returns the number of bullets without any alteration. However, in this case, since the same function or the same method is declared locally within this class, it ran the one declared locally, neglecting the original declaration within the superclass. This is called method overriding. This execution here and the declaration and functionality of get number of bullets declared locally, this method here and its sequence of commands and code would be run in opposite to the one declared in the superclass. This one will be superseding the one declared in the superclass. It will has precedence and an advantage over that one. So the other one would be neglected, would be forsaken, so to speak, and the local one would be run. All right. As for other functions, if they were not declared, let's say get number of missiles or get fuel capacity, if they are not declared locally, then C# try to look for that function at first in the local class, okay, again. If it's not found in the local class, it would go to the superclass. In case it was found in the superclass, it would be run from the superclass.
Alright, let's develop an example application on C# Windows Forms. So at first, create a new project, Windows Forms app, or you can find it on the right menu. This is where it is. Next, this is what the application is going to do. We're going to get a substance and write how much concentration of iron, gold, let's say you have some kind of material, and you have detected how much mass of iron, other types of metal, of copper is within that material. So we're gonna write the values or the masses of these different types of metals within that material, and then based on the weight, the total weight of the material, we're gonna output the percentage of different types of metals within that material in form of percentage. And also I'm gonna tweak a progress bar, which gives you from 0 to 100% progress, except we're not gonna use it to progress the loading of an application, but rather to display the percentage of metal within that material. I will call it metalworks. I'm gonna change the directory to my own directory for projects. Next, and create. So it's loading the Windows Forms. Alright, I'm gonna rename the text in the form here. So we're gonna go to form1.txt. By the way, I can either do it through the code when it loads or here in the properties. It's the same thing. Will be named metalworks.
I can even change the logo here. Okay, so if I go to the logo or the icon of the application, I can change. You see the icon? You can go to Windows, search for an icon, whatever it is, and change it. Or you can create an icon from a website. Okay, we're gonna give it this icon here. Okay, let's start creating the program. So I'm gonna go to the toolbox, at first let's get a label. So type label. We're gonna rename it here total mass of material, and I need a text box right next to it. Okay, text box, and this should have an identifier called mass. Okay, you go also to the properties of textbox1, which is the default name of textbox or identifier of textbox. You go all the way down. We're gonna call it total mass textbox. Okay, I can copy and paste so that we don't have to repeat the same search for different components, okay, because I want to reuse them. So Control C, Control V, and here I'm gonna call it, okay, let's say iron, or iron mass. Okay, iron mass. I copied this text box from here also. Okay, and this will call it iron mass TB. Copy paste. So gold mass, or let's say copper mass, silver mass. Finally, okay, what other types of metals do we have? Gold mass. Okay, now let's change the identifier of different text box. So you have here copper mass text box, silver mass text box, and gold mass text box. Let's also create a button to evaluate the percentage of these different metals within the material itself. So I will search for button here. We're gonna call it evaluate, the identifier, and we're gonna call the text. We're gonna change also the label for evaluate. You search for text and you change it to evaluate percentage. Now I also need the progress bar, right? But also at first another label to display the percentage of these different metals within the total material. Let's copy and paste. I need to change these. Okay, the text should be changed. Let's change all the text for them to percentage, okay, by default. As for the identifier, okay, we will call it, you go to name, iron percentage, label, LBL, copper percentage label,
silver percentage label, finally gold percentage label. So let's at first work with these before introducing the progress bar. When I click on evaluate, what it will do is getting the value from the total mass of material text box, and then the different values of masses from iron to copper to silver, and evaluate the different percentage for these. Of course, there's an important concept that the total mass of different metals should be equal to the total mass of the material itself. Alright? So if I click on evaluate, you see it automatically created a function or a method that is called when we click on the evaluate button. What we need to remember here is that this function, again, it is triggered by a click when we click on this forms button. More than that, what needs to be activated once we click on the button is getting the value that should be, by the way, a float or a double. It should be numerical from the total mass of material, then respectively from iron, copper mass, silver, gold, not necessarily respectively, but we need to get the different values here. The sum of these values should be equal to this total value. This is the first important concept. Afterwards, I need to evaluate the percentage of different metals within that material. At first, we're gonna declare double, okay, total mass equal double dot parse total mass dot text. Double iron mass equal as well double dot parse iron mass tb dot text. Okay. Copper mass equal double dot parse copper mass text box dot text. Double, finally double gold mass equal double dot parse gold max dot text dot tb. All right, and here I need to use the try catch clause so that the program won't break. So try, because in case the user entered a value that cannot be parsed to double, meaning he entered a text, a string, or like a value that is true or false, it cannot be handled by the program. So to avoid the program crashing because of that error, we use the try catch clause. And let's here also create a label that will display that error in case of an error occurring within the program while parsing values taken from the text boxes. All right, let's also copy this label here. Okay, so we're gonna turn this label into a red label for catching errors. We're gonna change the text, okay, to null at first, and then get the identifier error label, we'll call it. All right, so when there's an error, the error label will display what type of error we're talking about. So going back here, try, we're gonna copy these into the try clause, catch, exception, we'll call it E. Okay, in case we have an exception, error label dot text would be ex.message, okay? And all the program will go here. At first, we're gonna declare a variable called evaluated mass, which would be the sum of the mass or the weight for different metals. So evaluate mass is equal to iron mass plus copper mass plus silver mass plus gold mass. Okay. If the evaluated mass is different than the total mass, then there's an error in the input. So we need to display a message for the user. Error label is equal to, or the text equal to, disproportionate mass between material and metals. Otherwise, if not, meaning if the total mass is equal to the sum of different masses, or if the total weight is equal to the sum of iron weight plus copper weight plus silver weight plus gold weight, it means that the input of the user is correct. And by the way, mass and weight are the same thing in this context here. Then we can start evaluating the percentage. Okay, so iron percentage is equal to iron mass divided by total mass times 100. And I want to round this value so that we won't have many fractions after the comma. So math.round this entire value by 2 numbers after the comma. Okay? The same thing, double copper percentage equal math.round copper mass divided by total mass times 100 to get the percentage, comma 2, so that it would only give me 2 numbers after the dot. Double silver percentage silver mass divided by total mass times 100 let's save. Okay, now I need to display it on the labels. So iron percentage label dot text equal iron percentage dot to string. Given the fact that the text within the label is string, but the iron percentage is double value, so it needs to be casted into a string before we can assign the value of iron percentage to the label. The same thing for other labels. So copper percentage label dot text equal copper percentage dot to string, silver percentage label dot text equal silver percentage dot to string, and finally gold percentage label dot text equal gold percentage dot to string. Alright, let's run the program. So let's say total mass is 350, the iron is 100, the copper is 30, 170, the silver, so it gives you 300 so far, and the gold mass is 50. Evaluate, and you see we have the percentage. And by the way, I need to also add the percentage sign to the text here, okay? But by the way, if I change the value here to 20, so the value became disproportionate. The total mass of metals has become, or the sum of the weights of the metals have become disproportionate with the total mass, and you get this error. All right, now if I have, let's say, a string here, you'll get another error, which is the input is not in a correct format, because by the way, this test for try precedes the if statement where it tells you that there's a disproportionate mass. If I change it back to 50, okay,
Now this message, by the way, has not been cleared because we need to clear it manually, but it's working fine. Now if we take 20 from here and you have 30 added here, so it becomes 200, you see the percentage has changed, but we need to override the message of the error. Okay, so let's make some changes. So when this is evaluated correctly, I need to clear the error label. Okay, that's first. And as for the percentage, I need to concatenate the different percentage values with the percentage sign. Okay, so if we check it again, let's say the mass is 430, this is 200 so far, and 200 gold. We have a percentage being displayed. Of course, you can tweak with the percentage, we can make it blue. Let's change here, create an error, and you have 400G is not in the correct format. If I add to the mass here, let's say 5, you will get disproportionate mass between material and metals. Going back to 200, the error has been cleared. And we can, of course, change these labels. I'm gonna make them more interesting in the look, so I will make them blue. We're gonna get a web color, and I'm gonna make the font bold. If we run it again, 115, I think, 65, 75, 25. And you see, it has become more interesting in its look. Let's work right now on the progress bar. So how do we work with it? How can we make a progress bar change its length based on the value of the percentage picked here? So if you go to Toolbox, let's search for progress bar, drag and drop. Alright, and we're gonna copy it multiple times. Let's name the progress bar. Let's change the identifier. Iron progress or progress bar PB. Okay, iron PB, copper PB or copper progress bar, silver progress bar, gold PB. It's based on the percentage value. If we go back to the design, we need to change the width all the way to the maximum. Going back to the function, iron PB dot maximum equal 100. Also, the maximum of progress bars is 100. Now, for the actual value of progress, iron PB dot value equal iron percentage. Okay, now you see here, it is a double value. It needs to be converted into integer. So you simply place before it int, and it has been casted. The same way, copper PB dot value equal int copper percentage, gold PB dot value equal int gold percentage. Let's check it right now. Let's say 500. Okay, we have 150, so 380, then 120 remaining. And you see